and I'm so happy to be here. I'm a little bit sad that I don't know your language, because it sounded like you had two really interesting presentations before, and I have taken a picture and I will be translating so I can look at it afterwards. My topic is a little bit different, within the same area of preventive health, but we're going to focus on pregnancy and nutrition and my special interest of essential fatty acids. And I will also talk to you, translation. I will also tell you why I've been focusing on one nutrient group like that. Because originally, I'm a meal scientist, so I'm focusing on the whole meal, the dietary patterns, and how that affects. But regarding omega-3s, that is like an exception. And I hope that you will understand more why after this presentation. So, let's take it here. Yes. I would like to also be able to see my slides here. Okay, let's do it anyways. I'm going to be faced towards the... Yeah, could I just have my presentation here as well so I can see it? So
You didn't see?
No, it didn't change.
Okay.
I will continue. This is the classic professor to speak to the wall. So I had hoped to avoid that. But the slide was about why are we working with maternal nutrition, and of course it is to make sure that we are avoiding outcomes that can affect the pregnancy. That's the whole point. And for pregnant women, and mind you, this is not only relevant for women and pregnancies. There will be parts in here that is relevant for everyone. And I also believe that you can learn a lot of things from people going through different life stages, such as pregnancy and also aging. That's two groups that I learned from a lot by studying. And with pregnancy...
It works?
Yep.
Okay. 1 second. Yeah. Do we go like that? Can you call the person, because I'm not into PC person.
Should we take my computer instead?
Yeah, let's trick your computer. It will be probably easier, because sometimes it is like it is. Yeah. Okay.
I need to log in.
we can clap your hands. Yes. I'll try one more time there. Now, this is really bad.
I'm going to talk about nutrition during pregnancy. You don't need to eat in a different way when you're pregnant. You just need to try to follow the nutritional recommendations. So eating a healthy and balanced diet especially applies to pregnancy because they will have a higher need of nutrients. So that's why it's important to have the nutrient dense and not empty calories. You need to fill the food with nutrients. These women also need a little bit more, as you know, as time goes. But there are exceptions.
1 second. When you do that, it will sound fun. You know what? Yeah. Now try.
Yay! No.
Ah.
Yes. I just need to be close to this. Now it works.
Now it works.
Yeah, so there are exceptions to the rule that just eat according to what you usually do. There are some nutrients that could be hard to get through diet. And here you will see the most common recommended supplements. The supplements are aimed to be a complementary to a balanced and varied diet. But these are commonly recommended, and you don't, in Sweden and in many European countries, you don't need to get the permission from your midwife to take this. And that's, of course, number one, folic acid to avoid neural tube defects. So that's obvious. I think it's known in all countries. We also have iron towards the end of pregnancy. You will have a lot more blood, and pregnancy anemia is common. So iron in low doses you can supplement from home. So this is a common recommendation. But if they confirm that you have low iron, of course you will get prescriptions and have a set dose. And the third ones commonly supplemented and recommended to be supplemented during pregnancy is DHA. And that is not in the end or in the middle or only in the end. It's through all of pregnancy. And the need for DHA, this fatty acid molecule, is high for several reasons. And we know why we need folic acid. That's obvious. We know why we need iron. But we don't know often why do we need this DHA. And when we don't know, should we then think it's important? And that's why I'm going around talking about it. Hopefully you will see a little bit more why we have these recommendations. And this is regarding for all of you. This is the European Food Safety Authority health claims when it comes to these fatty acids. We have DHA and EPA that contributes to the maintenance of normal function of the heart. Okay, I'm not allowed to stand here. Normal blood pressure and normal triglyceride levels. And DHA contributes to, so this is you, all of you, normal function of the brain, maintenance of normal vision, and here we have relevant to pregnancy. It contributes to the normal development of the fetal brain, and also the normal development of the baby's eyes. So these are the approved, the well-known, that have a lot of research behind that you need to have those fatty acids, because they are building blocks and they have functions in these tissue that we have in the brain and in the eye, and have these functions of being anti-inflammatory or having those more restorative functions like DHA. We also have the next European Food Safety Authority claim, or European health claim, is going to be about preterm birth, because the evidence starts mounting regarding omega-3 being important for having a full-term birth, so not giving birth too early. And this is a Cochrane review with 70 studies and a lot of women, and it's high-quality evidence showing that the omega-3 fats during pregnancy, and this is particularly with DHA, reduce the risk of having a very premature baby. So this is going to be a claim in the future.
But this is for 200 milligrams of DHA.
No, they are actually, the conclusion of that study is to have higher doses, so at least 500 DHA.
500.
Mm. I thought that we should have a little education in fatty acids. I don't know if everyone are familiar with all of the fatty acids. We talk about omega-3s and omega-6 and EPA and DHA and arachidonic acid, and just so everyone know where we are, I want to show you these two families, the essential fat families. There are two families that we're referring to. And I'm going to explain this. It is the omega-6 family, and it is the omega-3 family. And there are many omega-3s and many omega-6. They have different names. And the mic battery. Okay, maybe it works a little bit more, but yeah. There are different names, but we don't need to learn everyone. No, it doesn't. I hope you can hear me. Yes. The most important ones that have the most biologically active fatty acids that have a important function in our body is the ones that can produce eicosanoids. And on the omega-3 family side, we have the EPA, the DHA, and on the omega-6 family side, we have the AA, or arachidonic acid, and also DGLA have some eicosanoids that it can produce. So these two are the ones, because this has more a pro-inflammatory effect, and this has more anti-inflammatory effect in the body. You often compare these two. So that's the omega-6-3 balance in many cases. It actually is the arachidonic acid to eicosapentaenoic acid ratio, but that's too hard to say. So that's why omega-6 to 3 ratio or balance. So the important thing to think about is to get your EPA and DHA. This is marine. You can hear fish fatty acids. You will find these in fish. The other ones you can find in plants, in plant oil, for example, higher up. But we're not going to talk about them today. It's going to be the next lecture. So, when we eat EPA and DHA, we get it into our digestive system, and from there it will go into the circulatory system, into our blood. And when we say blood, sometimes we talk about the plasma, the watery part of the blood. And sometimes we talk about the red blood cells. And I know that can be confusing. But red blood cells are tissue, it's satellite tissue. So that's just another way of talking about how much have been absorbed into our tissue from the circulating plants. And from there, it will be from the circulatory system, the watery part, it will go to different tissue or to be stored in our adipose tissue. Or other tissues, or for example red blood cells. It will get incorporated into the cell membranes and also to the liver. If you have a baby in your stomach, then okay. Then you're going to go through metabolic changes. Now it's a different situation how the fatty acids is going to be circulated in your body. Now the important thing is that the growing child gets the nutrients that you eat and what you have been eating, that you have been storing for your baby. So it's going to redirect. Yes, you will have from food, you will get these essential fatty acids, but you will also take it back from the tissue. The fats that has been incorporated into, for example, the cell membrane here, is going to be released and go back to the circulation system. So the levels can be high for the babies. And also the conversion from shorter fatty acids, other omega-3, the conversion is going to be higher. And for the brain, for the development of the brain, DHA accumulates in the baby's brain. So if you take all of the omega-3 that you have in the brain, 97% of the omega-3s are DHA. And the baby is going to get that from the mother. So the mother is the main supply of those fats. And in the beginning, the first trimester, the brain is going to begin to develop. The need from the fetus is not that high. The demand from the fetus is not that high. But during the second trimester, you will see an acceleration in the growth. So now the demand starts to increase, and in the third trimester, you have a rapid accumulation of DHA into the brain. And here is a bit of the critical part. Just to show, to visualize why DHA is important in the brain. This is from animal studies. Here you see a neuron from a normal diet with normal amounts of DHA. And you see, it's not only the number of these neurons, it's also the branching. It looks like a tree with the branches. So number of branches and how far they reach. Because they need, you will have one more here, and they need to meet so they can talk to each other, so they can send signals, these different neurons. And here is a picture of a deficient. So you see that it influences the branching and the length of the branches. So the form and shape of neurons is affected by the level of DHA. And this gives about 70% of the brain neurons are formed during pregnancy. Maybe you've heard of the famous Helen IQ study. One of the studies that showed that the mother's intake of omega-3 was favorable later for the mental development of children, and that children scored higher on mental processing at 4 years compared to placebo. So this was one of the more famous studies that could show that something was different from low levels DHA, EPA, DHA, low levels of fish intake compared with the women having higher. And I'm sure most of you knew about these things already. The baby's development and eat right for the child. We've heard it many, many times. But what I don't hear as often is that we talk about the health of the woman that are pregnant. So that's why I want to highlight DHA and EPA, both fatty fish, why it is important for the mother as well. The demand on her is going to be high. And the thing is, if she hasn't filled up on DHA and EPA before or during pregnancy, the fetus or the hormones from the fetus is going to draw out her own DHA and EPA from her own source. And she needs that for, like you, for heart health, for brain health, for eye, maintenance of the eyes. And she also needs it for later on in the pregnancy. If she wants to breastfeed, for example, which I'm highly recommending. But then the demand for DHA is going to be continuously high. And that will affect her health. Getting depleted of DHA is going to affect her health and her mood. And here are some of the key metabolic adaptations that tries to avoid a woman getting depleted. So mostly our body is very smart and tries to take care of the needs that we have. And this is one of those smart things that the body adapts. So in the first and second trimester, the women are in an anabolic state. So building, growing, gathering, and also have increased hunger. And that is for later in the pregnancy. And you will see things like circulating lipids go up and down as normal. As you eat, they go up and then down. And then you have insulin sensitivity. And that means you are sensitive to insulin in the way that you react as you should. And even more, you will have easy to get the sugar into yourself. And that would also make it possible for the body to store more fat. So all of these processes are for you to store more nutrition because you're going to need it. And then during the third trimester and also when breastfeeding, but first, third trimester, the woman is going to come into a catabolic state. And that is when your body reserves are broken down. So now you need to release the nutrients, because now is the time that to provide a lot of nutrients in the circulative system, in the blood. So it's always available for the baby. And if you look at the plasma then in the water part of the blood, you will see increased levels of fatty acids. And that can be a bit tricky if you're testing. If you're testing to see if someone have low levels, but they have high levels, they have higher levels. Now, a state of insulin resistance, not a natural insulin resistance. And this is important so that you can start to break down the nutrients and release it. But if you already have signs or have a beginning insulin resistance and you get this natural one on top of that, that is when you can also develop gestational diabetes during pregnancy. Yes, so fats are released. And this, you might recognize this from Andrew's. I have a different version of it. But if you eat every day, just one time every day, for example, if you supplement, then you will see a spike in your blood that day, and it will go down. And then every day, these spikes. So you have a supply of DHA or EPA. The thing is that the baby needs to have it, the baby grows all day long, every hour. So it needs to have a steady state supply of it. And that's why the woman's body releases it. Takes her own stored fatty acids and release it so it has a steady state all the time. And that's why you can, if you measure DHA, for example, in plasma during a pregnancy, you can see that it rises. So for every week or every other week in the pregnancy, you see rising levels of DHA, regardless if you are consuming it or not. And that's the body's reaction to being pregnant. But if you, on the other hand, measure in the red blood cells, and that was a tissue, satellite tissue, so that's more a status of the woman's own status, you can see it going down. And this is actually the only study that I've found, and now I have looked all over. This is Japanese pregnant women, so they had really high levels and ate a lot of omega-3s during their pregnancy. But even though you see it's going down in red blood cells. And omega-3 have been correlated to postpartum depression. And that is not what you wish to have when you're a new parent. The dad or the partners, I should say, don't want that to happen, and not the women either. That's why this is a relevant topic for everyone. They have measured the level of DHA in breast milk and compare it to the number of postpartum depression reported in different countries. And they do see when you have lower levels of DHA in breast milk, you have higher prevalence of depression. But now we're also going to talk a bit more about my favorite topic. What about EPA? We have talked a lot about DHA now. And the reason for us talking a lot about DHA is because this molecule stays in the tissue. It stays as an important component of these cell membranes, these fatty acids that we have around the cells. DHA is a very large molecule, a long, large molecule, and it's perfect to be in this shell of our cell, where it can, take up a lot of space, so nutrients can pass through it easily. That's why it's also it has other function. But it's, for example, in brain cells, where you want to have a lot of signals crossing the membrane fast, and also in the eyes, when you look, you get so many impressions all the time. It needs to be very fast. Also in the heart, by the way. But so the receptors on the cells need to be able to move and flow on those cell membranes, because the membrane is like a sea or a mosaic of phospholipids. And one thing is that the nutrients need to be able to pass through easily or form small droplets. Yeah, we're not going into that. But also the receptors that are receivers of hormones, for example, needs to be able to not stand still on one end of the cell all the time, because maybe you have a lot of saturated fats, and then the cell is not going to be as flexible. But if you have DHA, it can move around and be more faster in signals and so on. But EPA have a role of being anti-inflammatory. And that means that it oftentimes gets converted into, for example, an eicosanoid. Or it can be converted into or be used up as many different things that are anti-inflammatory, or like act as an antioxidant. So the EPA molecule doesn't stay in the tissue for that long. And when you then measure the tissue, for example, the brain tissue of an infant, you don't do that, but they have done that on babies that have passed away, for example. If you measure the tissue, you will only find DHA. So the conclusion has been that, okay, DHA is the only important molecule. And that's not true. And we know more about that now. The role of EPA is, for example, here we see a placenta membrane. Some of you maybe have heard of the blood-brain barrier. The placenta is also a barrier. And it's very restricted towards what nutrients it will let cross. So that's why we need, for example, fatty acid binding proteins that will take a fatty acid on one side and help it cross over as a transport. And the number of these and the type of these transporters are decided, because you need to have a lot of them if you want to get a lot of DHA to the baby. You need to have a lot of transporters. So how do you know what decides if you have a lot of transporters? They've tested that, and the correlation they see is for EPA. only is EPA significant because it reduces the inflammatory markers in pregnancy, which DHA oils do not. They have also seen that a high ratio of arachidonic acid to eicosapentaenoic acid may promote effects that are connected with inflammation, such as preterm labor or preeclampsia. EPA is involved in mediating the DHA concentration across the placenta. With other words, if the EPA content in your blood increase, then the transport proteins is going to increase, and that will get the DHA across to the baby. And if you don't have the EPA intake, you will not have as many transporters, and then you will not get the DHA across. And that's why the conclusion from that study, and from also the studies that takes over and also looks at these types of transporters also in the blood-brain barrier. So this looks like it's the same for our own brain, that we cannot just eat DHA. Pregnant women who just take DHA supplements without any dietary EPA may be unable to produce the right balance of eicosanoids, and also may limit the transport and uptake of DHA into the fetal cells. So it's a misunderstanding that a pregnant woman only needs DHA. And you should not produce DHA only supplements. It's also not natural to have DHA only foods in the natural environment, because EPA and DHA exist together, and that's why the ratio of EPA and DHA needs to reflect which occurs naturally in oily fish. And if you think about it, pregnant women don't need a special type of fish to eat. A DHA only fish, not that that exists, but it needs the same food as we, just more of it. More because it's growing the baby brain within her body. Here's also, this is not on pregnant women, but this is a very new review, a study of the studies. So 27th October this year, so I have looked at a lot of research with this depression and the correlation with EPA and DHA, and does it have any effect to take it together with antidepressants. And the conclusion was that, and this is important, so we're going to read this also. Omega-3 PUFAs have not a superior effect on depression. So I'm not saying that you should quit your medication and go against what your doctor is saying and take EPA and DHA. You need to talk to your doctor about that. But EPA has a more antidepressive effects than DHA. So the role of EPA is not to be forgiven. We have talked about why omega-3 is important during pregnancy.
have time.
Yes. How much?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Thank you. So we have talked about different things. Maybe the most obvious is the building blocks of the brain and the eyes of the baby, the well-known health claims, approved health claims, that goes for both eating fish, but also for supplementation. So the cognitive and visual development of the fetus. We have these growing amounts of studies showing that omega-3s are important for full-term birth, and that is not to have preterm birth, and it's also important for the weight of the baby, having a healthy weight. And one aspect with giving birth too early is that I didn't show you a graph, but the accumulation of DHA from the mother to the baby is a very high curve at the end of the pregnancy. So a lot of the essential fats gets into the baby's brain at the end. And the 3 last weeks are a very high transfer of these nutrients. So if the baby gets born before that, you will miss out on 3 of the most important weeks when we talk about transferring of nutrients. And that's one reason why we very much want to avoid having birth too early. It will affect the development of the eyes. Maybe you've heard or know about the eye defects on preterm babies. And quite recently also my colleagues from the University of Gothenburg have shown that if you give babies that have been born too early, if you give them DHA and arachidonic acid, which is an omega-6 that is important for babies' development, because omega-6 isn't bad. We just tend to eat too much of it in our adult modern diet, or child also. And that will improve the visual development of these children a lot. And that shows how important these fatty acids are when you are in the mother's womb. We also have an increased risk of preeclampsia, and that's related to the EPA and arachidonic acid status. We talked a little bit about gestational diabetes and also postpartum depression for the mother. So the picture that I showed in the beginning, where we have folic acid, we know why the women needs that. We have iron, we know why the women needs that, and we have DHA. Now you know a little bit more about why we really need to be recommending, or even better, if we could test it. And I always talk about these, my heroes, the Australians that have been starting a national screening program. So for all pregnant women, they are offered to take a blood test to see if they are in the group that needs to have or could benefit from supplementing with omega-3s. And my hope and my vision and my goal is that we can spread this and have it everywhere, because everyone deserves to know their levels and if this can affect the pregnancy outcome. And I'm very happy to be working on a company that provides these. You did hear about it. This whole blood fatty acid test. And I showed you the picture. If you measure the plasma, DHA and EPA, you will see that it increases because of pregnancy. You will see it increase. And if you measure the red blood cells, you will see that it decreases. But whole blood, you can get a more balanced picture. Here you see pregnancy week 24, and this is two different groups. The one have not been supplementing or not been given any extra advice on how to eat, and the other group was on intervention with omega-3 supplements. So you can see both positive increases and the negative decreases. So this is a more balanced. However, because of a lot of changes in blood and plasma level, and also the ratio between blood and plasma is going to change in the later part of the pregnancy, I recommend that you take the test in the first and second trimester and avoid taking in the third, because we don't yet know how the whole blood is going to handle that scenario. Maybe it is actually a very good way or good time to test. But we are gathering data about that now, so I will be able to tell you about that in the future. I also had a little bit of time to look at the database that we already have. We have 1 million tests, and we had actually some tests from Slovenia, so I had to look at it. And only looking at the females now, it was 2013 in the database that I have. And the DHA level in whole blood was 2.6, and the recommended level for red blood cells are about 5, or 5 or above. And these are not pregnant, so they don't need to be. I don't know if they are pregnant, but this is the average for women here. And maybe a more telling number is the arachidonic acid to eicosapentaenoic acid balance. So 23:1, and that surprised me, because I'm more used to see maybe 15:1, and this is also a selection that's not taking any supplements. So it's filtered for no supplements. So this group, just eating the standard diet here, has 23:1, and the man had 24:1. So I had to look a little bit more, and I saw that the level of arachidonic acid is actually higher compared to other countries, or the Nordic countries at least. So that's interesting. I need to look into it more. So thank you for the inspiration. And the last thing that I would like to talk about is also, because I get a lot of questions about fertility and omega-3s, and we don't have any approved health claims for this. We have correlation and associations in research, but we don't have any direct research that have shown that this is cause and effect relationships. However, we can speculate a little bit. If you look at one of the reasons for infertility is endometriosis, and having endometriosis, then it's very common that you have trouble or are infertile. And in one study where they looked closer at this, they saw that the ones having the higher EPA levels also was 82% less likely to have endometriosis. So this is not the solution to everyone, but this is actually an important point for many women. And lastly, we have one of my favorite studies to read. I recommend you to do it. I didn't get the reference. It's a study where they had an intervention with fish oil together with olive oil and vitamin D3. So not together in a mix, but separately. They tested fish oil, olive oil, vitamin D on women that couldn't become pregnant, and also another group that had no known problems. And the thing is that after this intervention, they saw that the quality of the egg was in the same good quality as someone living a normal life, healthy life. So healthy lifestyles, decisions with good food, and the quality you see in those situations, the same quality of the follicular fluid could be seen after this intervention. And that doesn't say that you will become pregnant, it's just say that there is an association with better quality of follicular fluid, and that is important for the egg development. And they also later have been continue studying this and also see an increased good results of IVF. And talking about this mixture of olive oil and fish oil and vitamin D, I don't know if you have talked about this today, since I didn't understand two of the presentations. But the reason for mixing these oils is to get closer to natural food. And as I said in the beginning, I'm originally a food and meal scientist, and I'm interested in the completeness of a meal. Because if you take one single nutrient and put it into a tablet, it's not going to be as effective as if you had it in the food. You will take away other nutrients around it, or antioxidants, or protein structures, things that we call the food matrix. You will remove, and it will not be as effective. But if you try to pick out the nutrients that goes together, that makes each other active. And for fat needs other fatty acids. Fat needs antioxidants. And fat also needs fatty acids with different length and not being as unsaturated. And for that, olive oil is the best choice that we have, because olive oil is cold pressed. You don't need to refine it to get rid of any toxins. So you have it cold pressed, and that means that you will keep the antioxidants from it. You also have high amounts of omega-9, and omega-9 is good for heart health, and we need to eat more of these monounsaturated fatty acids. And that would also make, so if you have a lot of concentrated omega-3s, so a lot of omega-3s, they will be exposed to air, for example, very easily. But if you put them together with fatty acids that are not as prone to oxidation, they will not be as exposed. And you know that olive oil you can have on your stove outside of the refrigerator for a long time without it going bad. But be sure you cannot, if you have opened it, you cannot have it outside of the fridge for very long. And if you mix those two together, you will get more stable fatty acids, just like food. And that will make it more effective in your body and more safer. And also that is why they use it in these sensitive situations. And I'm also happy to work for a company and also for researchers that was the ones that came up with this mixture from the beginning. This is all that I had today, but I'm happy to take any questions if you have any, or if you want to decide the schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Long sessions you have to do today. I feel for you.
Yeah, it was good that we exercised a little.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It was very inspiring. And for me, I had some problems with IVF